Well, this is some videotape just into our newsroom that you're going to want to see. Alaska Governor Sarah Palin speaking to reporters in the aftermath of the election. She was speaking to them in the lobby of the Arizona Biltmore Hotel where they had that event last night. She and John McCain did. Take a listen when she's asked about the outcome.
What are your takeaways as you go back to Alaska?
I want to make sure that Americans do understand that there is a little bit of disappointment in my heart about the world of journalism today, and I don't want any individual journalist to take it personally, but I have such great respect for the role of the media in our democracy. It is a cornerstone. It allows the checks and balances, but only when there is fairness and objectivity in the reporting. And I want to make sure that Americans can have great faith in that aspect of our society, the media. So whatever I can do there to help and to be able to allow credence to be given to the media, I want to help in that respect. That's where I started, was as a journalist, receiving a journalism degree. My foundation is, again, with great respect for what the vocation is all about, and I want to help restore some credibility there. Governor.
She had some issues with the media, saying that, you know, the reports that there was a rift between her and the staff members of John McCain and staff members who were appointed to her. She said, I don't even know who the rift would be with. It was totally false. It certainly wouldn't be with John McCain or any of his people, based on somebody's anonymous speculation. One other thing, too, that our Molly Henneberg said, that Sarah Palin said, which she said, there is no diva in me. If I cost John McCain one vote, I am sorry. And she says, I don't think my presence on the ticket trumped the effect of the economy this time around.
She is one of the rising stars of the Republican Party. The party suffered a string of defeats last night, lost the White House, also saw Democrats increase their majorities in Congress as well. So where do Sarah Palin and the Republicans go from here? Let's talk about it with Karl Rove, former senior advisor and deputy chief of staff to President George W. Bush. What about it? What about Sarah Palin's future in the Republican Party, Karl? What do you see?
Well, she made a lot of friends, and she's got a lot of enthusiastic followers around the country. The question will be over the next couple of years is there's one set of standards when you're fresh and new and you've been introduced a week before the Republican convention and you're the freshman governor of Alaska. It's another thing if you've been around the stage for 3 or 4 years, as she will be if she decides to step up for 2012. And where people said we don't really care if you know where South Ossetia or Abkhazia is or what the nature is of the prescription drug benefit run by the Health and Human Services Department now. Next time around, they will require her to know more. So the question is going to be, for her, how does she both be governor of the state of Alaska and do the things that are necessary to keep her name and her supporters out there, and that is to move around the country and to increase her expertise and comfort in talking about big issues.
What about some of the other up-and-comers in the Republican Party? I mean, this is a party that seems to be looking for new leadership, new faces.
Yeah. Well, look, there are a lot of them. The question is going to be, does the play of policy and politics over the next 3 or 4 years give them a chance to come into the limelight and shine? For example, Paul Ryan, who's going to be sort of the energy on the House Ways and Means Committee for Republicans, is going to have an opportunity to shine if there's a big battle over tax cuts. Similarly, Mitch McConnell, he's going to be the most powerful Republican in Washington, D.C., because as the leader of 44, maybe 43, but probably 44 Republicans in the Senate, he's going to have a lot to say about whether or not an Obama agenda gets through the Senate, particularly an Obama agenda that's shaped without input from Republicans in the House and the Senate.
But is there going to be a tendency on the part of Republican, especially senators, to look back at history, the last 2 elections, and say, whoa, you know, my goose is cooked if I don't vote a little more liberally?
No, I don't think so, because, look, we're now in a place where in 2010, the irony is that the Republicans are going to do well in 2010 almost regardless of what happens. First of all, there's a thing in politics called surge and decline, where a party surges and then it gets to owning some territory it shouldn't own, and it begins to decline, and that generally happens in the first off-year election of a party. It didn't happen in 2002 for the Republicans, but it was only the second time in the history of America where it didn't happen. So in 2010, 2010, Republicans are going to make gains in the House and Senate. Ironically enough, 2010 is also a redistricting year. We elect the legislatures that in 2011 will deal with reapportionment and redistricting. And states like New York and Michigan and Pennsylvania are going to lose seats, and states like Florida and Texas and Georgia are going to gain seats. And as a result, we're going to see congressional seats move to those more hospitable Republican states and out of these reliably Democratic states. And 2010 is the year that we elect the legislators who are going to be charged with drawing those lines.
Carl, one of the criticisms that has been directed at Republicans these days is that the party has sort of gotten away from the conservative, smaller government principles that Ronald Reagan liked to espouse, and things like this Wall Street bailout became sort of a last straw for conservatives, and in part they abandoned the party this time around. What do you think about that?
I disagree. In fact, if you look at it, you had a number of people who opposed the bailout, like Feeney of Florida going down to flaming defeat, and a lot of people who took a principled stand in favor of the rescue plan, like John Shattuck of Arizona, who initially opposed the plan and then went home and met with small business people and saw how desperate their conditions were, who then voted for the plan, and he was challenged in a tough election and won by a surprisingly healthy margin. I do think there is a concern that with these earmarks, this is really devastating, these earmarks. You may not know this, but the last 3 years, the discretionary spending of the government has been essentially held flat. Discretionary domestic spending is flat. We're spending more on the military, spending more on border security, spending more on homeland security, but the budget is flatlined discretionary domestic spending. But earmarks caused everybody to ignore that and to focus on the bridge to nowhere and these other egregious examples of pork put in the budget by legislators to supposedly benefit their reelections.
Well, and how do you get away from that? I mean, the president doesn't have line-item veto authority.
Well, you have to have a caucus, it says, like John Boehner. John Boehner said, look, I have never asked for an earmark since I came to Congress. I will never ask for an earmark. And what you need to do is have, at minimum, a system of transparency in which if anybody requests an earmark, their name is attached to it and it gets voted on. You may not know this, but most of the earmarks in the budget are never voted on. They're included in what's called report language that's written by the members and their staffs and put in a document that's never voted on in committee or in the House itself, and yet the agencies are trained to treat it as it has the force of law, because if they don't treat it as the force of law, they know that their oversight committee is going to be breathing down their neck on some issue.
Americans don't like paying huge amounts of taxes. They don't like deficit spending, so say the surveys, and yet if you say, hey, I'm going to bring you a new community center or a new post office or a new study program, whatever, they like that.
I'm not certain they do. I think if you say, look, I'm bringing a new community center, the town fathers may like it for about 10 minutes, and then they've got their idea about what they want from you next. But the average voter gets it. The average voter gets that one of the reasons that you live beyond your means is if you do things like, look, Barack Obama admitted that there's $18 billion of earmarks in the budget. That's the stuff that they vote on. It doesn't include the stuff they don't vote on. $18 billion is a lot of money, and if you keep doing that year after year after year, pretty soon, as Averitt Dirksen said, you get into real money. And voters don't like it.
Karl Rove, thank you.